Nanamegoma, Massugugoma, Magoma. If you don't know what these words mean and you want to make manga, then sit down, grab a notebook, and let's talk about thinking like a mangaka. Hello everyone, my name is ArtCrumbs, and today we will be going back into my Think Like a Mangaka series, specifically with Komawari and different panel types. There are lots of different panel types that we could talk about, and I could probably talk about it forever, but in this episode we're only going to be focusing on 3 really common types. A lot of these panels have like equivalents in Western comics, so these are things that whether you're making manga specifically, manga inspired comics, or even Western comics, you can learn from. So with that, let's look at the first panel type, which is Nanamegoma. Nanamegoma, or oblique panels in Western comics, have irregular or diagonal angles to them. They're not straight edged 90-degree panels, and the primary purpose for these panel types are to show energy and action and impact, speed. Like that's the primary purpose of these panels. You'll notice that a lot of times they tend to channel energy into smaller corners, or you can use them to have like an impactful moment. Not necessarily has to be like action going on within the panel itself. It can just be an impactful moment. For example, with this first page that I have here from Red River, amazing manga by the way, you guys should go read it. We have this really like tense moment where our heroine, she's getting ready to attack, and she's thinking, she's stressful. It is a stressful moment, but she is stressed. So we have these really interesting angles going on. We're leaning into the action. We're starting to move forward. She's got her blade ready to go. She's thinking. There's a sound. She's thinking. At least I know he was with me. And then we have this yelling and screaming and action. We have speed lines and we have energy channeled. She's leaning forward, and then boom, she's running at us. She's running, something's gonna happen, right? This is an exciting moment. And by using a combination of oblique panels, the speed lines, these really dynamic hukidashi, or like speech bubble shapes, we can create this really strong like, oh my gosh moment, right? So when you use these, you can have these angles as soft or as extreme as you want. But the primary thing is to think about, you don't want to use them too much, obviously, because if you use them too much, then they won't be special anymore. But the thing you want to think about is, how can I utilize these to go work with the reading direction, with the direction of action? In this second example that I have from my own work, God's Bane, we have this sort of angle here going on where Mao, Arasu's Miyape, is being confronted. This is the first time we're seeing his face in the manga. And so I have this sort of general just block moment, and then Purama here, he's confronting Mao. He has the power here, but Mao is aggressive. He's the aggressor one. He's like, well, you can't do this to me. It's not gonna work. And then Lanfei is kind of leaning back. He's looming over Mao, and he's like, okay, cool, I can take my time because like this isn't gonna kill you. So so I use this to sort of like, Mao is it's more of like an emotional context for this one versus like an actual action. But on the next page, I'm actually going to show you guys sort of a similar, I'll show you both like an action-based one and then more of an emotional context-based one. So these are 2 more examples from my work. I think not just telling people about things, but actually showing people, we are visual learners after all, will be very helpful. This is a page where we're talking about Ballet's history with Ak. Again, both of these are from my God's Bane manga. We have some action going on here. They're going in opposite directions. Ballet is chasing Ak. She's going this way. And then we have Ak here. The direction is being channeled, right? So he's running this way. For me, I chose to bring this one down to sort of help with perspective, to make it sort of feel like it's a funnel. So I'll kind of draw this again. We've got a kind of funnel action going on to sort of maybe help with the speed, the channeling of the energy. And then with here, I just chose to have Fale go the opposite direction. She's rising to the challenge, so that was sort of my thought process there. And then again here, we have a more emotional context one. I kind of did a couple, I don't know why I just drew that line. We have a couple different things that I thought about with here. We have Mao's eyeline physically lower than Lonfet's. He's having to look up to him, and I don't know, Lonfet was his old name. Rama is looking down at Mao. He's looking down at him. Mao's literally like on the ground, pinned to the ground, and Brahma's like, those eyes aren't going to intimidate me. I've had to dispose of Ren, another Miape, many times. And we have this dynamic line, like, separating them. Mao is sort of like, you know, like, what can I do? What can I do? Like, I'm in trouble. You know, so I wanted to show that imbalance, but I wanted it to be a tense moment. I mean, I could have just used, like, a solid Massugugoma. Like, I could have used just solid straight panels, but I wanted this to be a slightly tenser moment. So I still have, you know, Mao leading in it because I'm trying to keep the motion going and like keep it tense. So that was why I used like slightly angled panels, as I didn't want it to feel flat and boring. I still wanted there to be a little tension. So with that, I just mentioned Massugu. So Massugu are straight panels with like 90-degree corners. These don't necessarily have to be boring. Like, you can still have a lot of action in these, and that's why I picked this first example here of Kirara from Inuyasha. We have this really like, oh, she's pouncing. You know, it's a very like, it almost feels like she like cherry bomb, boom, like right on top of him. So I thought that was a really fun choice. But what I really love is this particular panel right here. First, when we're, you know, it's right to left, so as we're reading, we see her paw hit the tail, and then boom, snap, and then the sound, and then the result of that snap, like the result of that sound. So I thought that was really, really fun to kind of like just the boop, 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 sort of the pacing, the timing. It's almost like a music beat within this really long panel. So I thought that was really, really cool. And she kind of looks up and she sees the tail shaking, and then, oh, who is this? Who is this person? I'm not going to spoil who it is if you haven't read the manga yet. So it's like, oh, what is this? What's going on? So you can have a lot of action and a lot of energy and excitement within panels that are Massugugoma. It doesn't necessarily have to be like awesome, crazy energy. Same thing here. This I thought was a really fun arrangement. This is from the manga Fushigi Yugi by Yu Watase. I thought this was really fun. We have an angle here, we have another angle here, and then we have what's called a breakout panel, kind of right here on its own. It's kind of just a really interesting layout, but all of these are technically Massugugoma panels. This is really interesting though. We have these two panels here that don't match up, but what's really cool is if you think about it this way, if you think about them this way, it almost works like a Nanamegoma, right? So we have like a narrowing. It's, ooh, someone's lurking. Oh, a hand, and then like she, you know, gets yanked into the bushes. So I thought that was a really, really fun way to use like Massugugoma panels, but still make it feel like there's a lot of energy. But in like Massugugoma panels are great for Magoma, which is the type of panel we're going to be talking about next. But I've got just a few more examples to show you from, again, my own work on how I've taken like these Massugugoma panels and made them fun and interesting, and not just like flat and boring. So let's look at that. Here are a couple examples. This is actually a 2-page spread from my own work. We actually have this page and then this one. So this is a transition going into a new scene. We have some souls being taken and stored in this necklace, and then we have some speed lines here, make this feel a little bit more interesting. They're both running down here. Zai appears, she talks and she's talking. This is from an older version, but I still liked how I used them, so I figured I would show them. The main thing I wanted to focus on actually was this set of panels here and this set of panels here. I actually used this technique twice on the same page. If you notice, these two pages could technically connect. And what I did to break them up to make it feel, rather than like long note, long note, long note, if we're thinking about this in a music form, you know, you want to have pacing, you want to make it interesting, you want to keep it varied. I broke this up into smaller sections. So what I did is I made this a really quick panel. I showed a bug because I thought it was cool. And then I put that bug right here to bring in, oh, here's Hokue. What's Hokue doing? What's he up to? I have this really nice, beautiful foliage. boom, we see what he's looking at. I did and make sure to include some angles in here because I wanted to keep this a little bit more interesting. But this is a really, really light contrast, and this is a really, really, really dark contrast. So hopefully the focus stays right here as a reader, that this is the primary thing that you're looking at. This is the focus. And then this bottom panel, I basically took the same technique that I did here and I used it down here, where I took this one giant scene and I broke it up. We see where Hokue is right here. He's, looking at it. We see an empty panel here, but he's not there. So clearly he's moved. We see an empty panel here. Clearly he's moved, but we have a bubble. And then we see him here on this very last panel where he's thinking again, or he's talking again. Oh, I can't hear any noise from outside. So this is a progression where I didn't have to draw Hokue on every single panel, but by the time we got to the last one, you understood, oh, hey, like he's moved, he's walking. So it creates a sort of feel of rhythm, of movement, of progression without necessarily having to have these really large, flat, boring, straight panels. Right, you're always able to include stuff like that to make them more interesting. I mentioned on the last page, I'll show you right here, the last page, we had this breakout panel here. I want to show you guys another way that you can utilize breakout panels to make them more interesting. So let me clean this really quick for you. Da-da-da. So now we have a clean page. Using breakout panels, which is when the character steps outside of the borders of a panel, can be really, really interesting to create unique and dynamic shapes within your own panels. Now, technically, if a character breaks out, it's not considered a Massugugoma panel anymore. But if that's all you have, you can utilize breakouts in combination with Massugugoma panels to keep stuff fresh and keep stuff, dynamic. So here we don't have a panel border, and here we don't have a panel border, right? So we have, of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panels on this page, 2 of them don't technically have borders. But we have a dynamic action here. We have an angle. Even the sound effects that I used, I kept them at an angle. We have an arrow at an angle, right? So I kept things angular. I didn't keep things, if I had wanted to, I could have the bamboo here, and I could have the arrow just boop, like all the way straight across. I know that's not the sound an arrow makes. When it like hits wood, right? Like it's really loud. I have to be really careful with how loud I say things because I do have a mouth healing from dental surgery, and I don't want to dislodge the blood clot, so I apologize, you guys. But by keeping this angled, I can keep this, interesting. And the reason why I kind of want this is I kind of wanted it to feel a little cramped in. He's like, whoa, suddenly there's an arrow whiz by his head. I'm sure any one of us would be startled. And then the next 2 panels are pretty simple panels. They have these nice 90-degree angles, but I made sure to put one of these bubbles sitting on the wakusen of these 2 panels. Remember from the last episode, wakusen is the actual panel border itself, that line that goes around, wakusen. I put the bubble or fukidashi on the actual edge here to kind of help keep that shape interesting and to lead right into the next panel where she's like, oh, now I have your attention. This is Rin. Oh, Elder, now I have your attention. Tell me, will you live or die? Oh, this is obviously a confrontation, right? So clearly this isn't a happy moment. So she picks up her arrow. He's got this huge panel, right? There's this huge panel here. And he's squeezed into a third of it. Okay, it's why did I do that? The reason is this bubble here and here, this is Rin. She's taking up 2/3 of the space of this panel without her even being in the panel. For me, I wanted to feel that confrontation, claustrophobic feeling, right? So by, choosing to do a breakout panel here, so after, let me step back just 1 second, clean this up to make my point. So first we have we have this arrow that hits the bamboo, and he's startled. Okay, now that I have your attention, tell me, Elder, will you live or die? And then she pulls, she draws, she's getting ready for another one. He's like, oh crap, your choice. you know. So you want to, so even though I have like I have straight panels, I've utilized other like creative angles within the artwork itself and the breakout panels to make it more interesting. So with that, there's one more type of panel that I would like to cover within this episode, that you can use in combination with Massugugoma panels and Nanamegoma panels to make them feel more interesting, to create more tension, but also give a brief period where you think about things. This type of panel is called Magoma. Ma panels are typically used as reaction panels. They don't usually have word balloons. Something like a word balloon with a ... doesn't technically count as fukidashi, which is word balloons. It doesn't technically count as dialogue. So you could get away with that, but typically it's a quiet moment. It's a pause. It's reaction. In Japanese culture, it's completely normal that when someone is talking, you're listening, nodding on, naruhodo, and then you pause, and then you respond. You don't just, it's not like American or like Western culture where like you're thinking of your response like before the other person's even done speaking, right? You have a pause, okay, then respond. And this really awesome like cultural quirk is in manga as well as ma panels. And one of my favorite examples of this is this scene here, where we have Jin, and then Yusuke Urameshi, and this is from, if you're not familiar with this manga, it's called Yu Yu Hakusho, my favorite manga, so I will probably use it a lot in my examples. I'm sorry if you don't like Yu Yu Hakusho, I will be using it a lot in my videos. So we have this moment here, there's a tournament going on, Jin and Yusuke, like, just got in a little quaffle, and Yusuke got his face beat. And so we have Jin, he's leaning into Yusuke. This is a Nanamegoma, right? This is building tension, he's exciting, he's getting ready for the next thing, and then Yusuke is staring at him. He's like, he licks the blood off his lips. That's a reaction, like, this is building tension. This isn't necessarily like, reaction. This is the build up before what happens next. The other thing I want to make sure you guys see here is the eye lines are level. They're staring at each other. We understand here that the characters are looking at each other. It builds that tension because, think about it. If you're talking with someone, if you're fighting with someone, your eyes are locked on them. And so by doing this subconsciously, by keeping them level with each other and adding that very slight Nanamegoma, that angled panel, we're building that tension. Right, so here's like an actual page example of this, and I actually took the liberty to break this down for you guys so we can actually look at like why this works and how this is being used. So our first panel, it's a Nanamegoma panel. You haven't seen everything yet, and he starts winding his arm up. What the heck's going on with that? And our second panel, building it. We're building it. There's more stuff going on. We have this good, which starting to build, and we see Yusuke just kind of watching. That's that. No, I see. And then, what's that? This is his reaction. So we technically have two Magoma here. He's just watching. They're very, very quick. They're small panels, it's a very quick change where he's just watching and then he realizes what's going on. And then we see what Yusuke is seeing. And we see this nice big panel called a Misegoma, which we'll talk about in the next video. We see what Yusuke is seeing. We get to experience and be surprised at the same time that Yusuke is because we have thought, reaction. What is he seeing? Oh, wow, now we get to have the same reaction that Yusuke just did and be surprised with what is going on here? What is this? Like, what is Jin doing? Like, that can't be good, right? He's preparing an attack, right? So we have nice big volumes of noise. We have this nice beautiful circular motion going on with the smoke. Go, like it's wind sound. We have this really nice big energy panel, and by using the sort of circular circular sound effects, the smoke and the dust and that's being disturbed, it creates a form of energy. And we've got Jin right here kind of in the middle of all this, and he's like he's got a little smirk on his face. Surely what's going on next is going to be exciting, right? So There we go. So that's sort of like an example. Oh, one more thing. Notice there's no backgrounds in this particular sequence. We know where they are. We know that they're on this stage in the middle of the dark tournament. So like we don't necessarily have to know what's going on. None of the characters have moved. There's no like additional information that we need to be shown. We're not even seeing the reactions of the other characters because in this specific moment, that doesn't matter. It's not relevant information, so don't draw it. Backgrounds are the type of thing that you only want to add if it adds extra information. Alright everyone, I hope you found that video helpful. This is part of my What is Komawari video series, which is part of my larger Think Like a Mangaka series. Y'all really loved the first video, and I'm so sorry the second one took a while. Like I said, I was recovering from dental surgery, and I didn't want to like move my mouth around too much. I actually had surgery twice in the last month. And I've been recovering from that. And also just didn't have the energy for it. Just to recap what we did talk about Nanamegoma, which are oblique panels, Massugugoma, which are like straight 90-degree corner panels, and then Magoma, which are like reaction, pause panels primarily. In the next video, we're going to be talking about other things like Misegoma, Hikigoma, and Mikurigoma. I'm not going to tell you what they are because that would ruin the fun, right? But those will be 3 more panel types that I think will be more useful. I did briefly cover Misegoma earlier in the video, so maybe that'll give you a clue as to what we'll be talking about next time. If you like my video and want to see more of them, please hit subscribe and hit the bell so that you don't miss out on anything. I also like to stream my manga making process, and I always invite people to come ask me questions so I can offer them demos in my streams. So with that, I'm ArtCrumbs, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao!